Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Rethinking EDU. In this podcast, a bunch of us teaching friends sit around and talk about our teaching experiences, schools, and education movements. We try to provide a unique and refreshing take on the state of education. Before we get too much into it, let us introduce ourselves. I'm Mike Dunn. I'm a teacher outside of Philadelphia. I teach in a private school, and I'm joined with my friends Janine, Julie, and Matt. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Janine, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Janine Dunn, and I'm a middle school educator. I work in a public charter school.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Downing. I work in a large urban public district right outside of Philadelphia, and I'm a K-8 technology coach, helping teachers integrate technology in the classroom.
Hi, I'm Julie Cook. I'm a middle school teacher in a K-8 charter school outside of Philadelphia.
Awesome. And I guess we should probably talk about how we met a little bit, right, guys?
We met each other in our EDD classes through Northeastern University. First, we met on discussion board, and then we were able to connect in the summer at a convening in Boston. It was great. We were together for a couple days and had a couple beers together in the bars and a couple cups of coffee, and we're able to talk about some of these issues that are sort of near to our hearts and near to what we do day in and day out of the schools. And we've continued that dialogue, since then. So it's been great.
So the goal of our podcast here, right, is to kind of tackle some pertinent educational issues. We try to design some questions beforehand that allow us to get our brains going and sharing some of our views, but also some of our experiences too. We're living in a particularly unique time in education right now, especially these days. As we are recording this podcast, all of us are under state order, stay-at-home rules because of the COVID-19 virus that's been really shocking the world and certainly shocking schools. And so today we wanted to talk about what our experiences have been like trying to deal with the COVID-19 virus. And we kind of wanted to kick off with what school's like for us right now. And I can share a little bit about my experience. So school for me is quickly ramped into almost exclusively Zoom conference-based learning, right? Where I'm hosting classes of students where we are, everybody's in their homes. Everybody is, doing our best to facilitate good instruction and trying not to get too overwhelmed with technology, I think is a common theme that's coming up for us right now. Our teachers are pretty good with technology, but even so, it's really hard. The learning curve for Zoom conference for us alone has been pretty steep. I mean, kids are at home, that's been great, but then the parents all of a sudden are becoming even more of an integral aspect of the learning process for us. So where I teach mostly high school kids, and where I would have communicated almost exclusively with them in the past, I'm bringing parents right in on this, saying, this is what's going on a regular basis with your kid. And they have to be there to watch them learn too at home. And so that's an entirely new experience for them. Janine, you want to chime in here and talk about what your experience has been like?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you had mentioned that connection with the parents, that piece with the parents. And just from my own perspective, I have 3 children of my own that are all in elementary school. I got a kindergartner, a 4th grader, and a 6th grader. And our school, yeah, we've made the transition to online learning I'd say we've done a pretty good job of it where we're at. But just looking at it from the parent perspective, because here I am navigating, like I'm still working full time and transitioning to online for my students, but then my own kids are also transitioning to online, and I've got a kindergartner that's trying to do stuff. So it's been challenging to say the least, but we're getting through.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Matt, you got 2 little ones at home. What's been that experience like for you trying to, you're still supporting teachers, but are your little ones also trying to learn from a distance?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. My two girls are in Philadelphia. They go to a charter school in Philadelphia, and right now Philadelphia isn't requiring any new work, so it's all review. So we've sort of have done all of the activities we always want to do but never have time for, and we're just sort of
Nice.
checking them off like one by one. Today they were putting lettuce in a mason jar with food coloring and seeing what happens. Um, I've also done a lot of artwork through Art Hub for Kids, so we do that every day. I've been getting really good at my bunny. My ears are just really nice.
And Julie, what about you? What's your experience been? Now you've got teenagers or college age kids, right?
Right, right. Yeah, so you know, we're empty nesters and they've all come home. So, well, two of them. One of my sons is a social worker in New York City, so that has sort of taken my breath away. And it's, everything I can do not to, you know, go up there and get him. But, he's an essential worker, so I'm staying put for the time being.
Yeah.
And I just think about, like 3 weeks ago, how fast everything's happened. 3 weeks ago, I can remember, talking with colleagues about whether we were going to cancel activities, trying to get our heads around what was really happening. Um, and then within 2 days, we were teaching online. So it was a lot to figure out. Our school took the opposite approach. Instead of a slow burn, we sort of like went all in with online learning, and we pretty much we're on the same schedule mostly that we started with. We've made some tweaks along the way, but just like you, Mike, we're sort of doing Zoom sessions in the morning, and then small group and independent work the rest of the time. So, yeah, it's been a huge transition in my house and in my teaching, of course.
Yeah, interesting. We actually, just to talk about schedules for a second, we actually went to a 4-day per week schedule where
As did we.
we've done Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Wednesdays are a little bit lighter. I found myself today scheduling one-on-one meetings with kids that needed extra support for 10, 20 minutes or something like that. Um, but most of our instruction is meant to fit into the other 4 days of the week. And it's really interesting. We'll get to this a little bit later, I think, in the episode when we talk about the future of school a little bit, is to think about the amount of time that kids are spending in the building right now, or well, not right this moment, but the amount of quote unquote seat time that we're asking kids to be in the building is X amount of hours, and yet here we are transitioning to only 4 days, and it. I don't know what that's going to mean for instruction or for learning. Or for time, but we found it to be imperative because kids were exhausted at the end of, say, one day of distance learning. Being, even myself, being on video calls and having to attend and being engaged
Mhm.
for X amount of hours is super challenging.
This week we made that same move. 4 days, exactly the same. We're calling them mostly offline Wednesdays, where we just have office
Nice.
hours, and we have different times where kids can pop in for some extra help or some questions, um, or just to check in with us. That happens too. Or parent meetings or team meetings. So the teachers aren't really offline that day, but from the student perspective, I agree. We're always worried about screen time. So trying to navigate that and have some sort of balance in your life, especially for young children, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, that kind of gets me to the next thing I was thinking about in this transition is about people balancing their work life and family life and all of that. And Matt, I know you talked a little bit ago about how you've been balancing it with your young kids. Um, what have you been thinking around balancing, and how have you been approaching that?
Yeah, that's a great question to think about, and something we've all, probably been thinking about a lot over the past couple weeks because none of us have really chosen this path. none of us have control about it. And it's been forced upon us, and we're trying to do the best we can, but we're trying to do the best we can within a crisis. And we don't really know how to operate within a crisis, alone. And then we're guiding other teachers through a crisis. We're guiding other students through a crisis. We're guiding our family through a crisis. And, that can be draining, and that can be sort of like a weight on your shoulders that's sort of hard to balance. And it can weigh on you. And I feel like the past couple of days, it's been, weighing on my shoulders, a bit more and more, trying to help and help and help. And it's this, thing you're trying to help with, but you can really never get your head around it because it's a crisis. This is really serious, and people are sick and people are dying. And that's why we're, in this place. And it's unfortunate, but it's been hard. But some things, we like to do are go on walks. You're allowed to do that and stay 6 feet away from other people walking along the city streets. So you kind of sometimes you have to cross the street. Our girls never knew how to ride a bike, but they finally learned this past week. Another thing is like trying to balance work life, right? Like none of us have worked from home, right? Our whole life we've worked in a building, but now we're forced to work at home, and we don't know how to work from home. So it's like we have to figure out how to work from home. Like my neck is killing me because I'm at the computer like straight. My eyes are like burning. So I'm like, you're not supposed to work that much straight through looking at the computer. And I didn't know that, you know what I mean? Because I've never done this. So yeah, it's been good. And then I've also been like having to check myself. Like if you get really wound up, it's sort of easy to send that email, right? Like that sort of aggressive email, like you're like in a pitch, like work it, and someone says something that annoys you a little bit. You're just like, at them and just send it. And I've had to hit, the unsend button a couple times. I'm thankful that Google has that little grace period where you can.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Those are just a couple things, just trying to navigate through.
Again, having so many people, there's a lot of people in my house, just so you know. I have like 9 people that live in my house.
Come again? What?
And we just moved too. So throw that in there too. We just moved, and our house wasn't finished being built, so there's rooms that are undone. And my bedroom is in my dining room with my my office. So, but I guess the key here though is that right now my goal is to create a sense of normalcy for my students, for my children, as the best I can for my family. So like we've really been trying to stick to a schedule. We've been putting out schedules, like suggested schedules to our students. I've got schedules set for my kids and myself, just so that we can stay on track with things, and that it does like create that sense of normalcy, even though that we are in a crisis.
I love that idea of like saying, here's kind of where you were, here's what your normal day would have looked like had you been in school or been in daycare or been in whatever. Let's try to mirror that at home and do all the things that Matt's talking about too, you know. What about you, Julie? What have you been trying to do to kind of make the balance happen?
Well, I think like everyone, I've spent a fair amount of time worrying, picturing my son up in his Queens apartment, as Will Smith listening to Bob Marley or something, and I Am Legend. Like,
Oh
I
my
have all
gosh,
these,
yeah.
it just, you watch the news and it's really, it's hard to picture him, as a social worker up there, just sort of bracing for impact. But, also thinking about, we all feel so powerless, there's nothing really to do to help. So I'm trying to think of ways that I can help, as Janine said, provide a sense of normalcy, of stability for my students, and their families, just trying the best I can to, um, and actually approach every day with a little bit of gratitude. I'm so thankful for, the whole country sort of pulling together. There's so many, um, people who are trying to help, and trying to focus on what their efforts are. It's really been inspiring, to see that come together. No matter how bored we get, no matter how much I just want this to be over, hoping that this is not our new normal. Um, just trying to provide and do the best I can, for everyone I can be in contact with. That's basically where I have been. I'm in a house with the four of us trying to find different corners of our house to have Zoom meetings with professors and people working and we're trying to find our different corners. That's all there is to it. So yeah, that's what it's been like for me. I've been picking up a few extra hobbies. I'm learning to refinish woodwork. I wish it were a little warmer outside so I could be in my garage a little more. Um, yeah, drinking gallons of tea and
Nice.
just trying to get through the days as best I can.
We actually had a meeting earlier today with our parents. So we've done I guess our school closed like March 12th or so. Um, so it's been about 3 weeks worth of online learning, and we offered a Zoom session for parents today because it was our first like offline Wednesday, and over half of them showed up for it at least, and they had nothing but accolades and just we're so glad that you guys are doing this and creating that sense of normalcy, and that you're giving them a schedule and things to focus on rather than just having to think about this crisis situation right now. So I know we heard from parents that they were appreciative of what we were doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And our parents have been similarly appreciative, and that's been really nice too. I think part of what I was saying earlier is that there's a little bit of a veil that's been removed. Parents are watching their kids learn potentially for the first time, and it's weird. Parents are like, "Whoa, I can't believe, you know, so and so this is happening or whatever, whatever." And that's been super, super interesting for me to hear those conversations happen with some of my parents. I sit on a committee for diversity, equity, and inclusion in my school, and we in our bi-weekly meeting today started talking about, so what kind of traumatic experiences are parents, kids, and teachers experiencing right now, and how can we leverage some of the school's expertise. So we have a bunch of school psychologists on staff, school counselors, to not only help kids, which is already happening, also to help parents, which is not happening as much, but I think we are trying to figure out how we can help parents, but also to help faculty. A lot of faculty, we're asking faculty to essentially work, quote unquote, full time while having kids and not being able to leave their house really. And that's a tall order. And so we said today we have to figure out a way to support faculty better. Not from a give them more stuff to deal with kind of way, right? Which somebody sent out an email today that was like, "Oh, look, Discovery Education is giving accounts away for free. If you're a teacher listening to this, go check out Discovery Education. Really great." Um, but a method for us to kind of like uh, turn the fire hose into a garden hose, right? Is like how are we able to support our staff a little bit better so they can keep going through the long run.
I think I've had to remind myself that although it certainly feels like we've been asked to whip up a cyber charter school or something in a few days, this is really emergency school.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
great word for it. Yeah.
and mistakes are going to be made, right? Um, we have to go easy on people. I think that includes everyone from the governor to the secretary of education, administrators, teachers, parents, students included. We are going to be better at this a week from now. The finesse, I think, will come later. Should this last into, definitely through April, May, we just don't know at this point. So again, when I said, is this going to be our new normal? How long are we planning for? If it's going to be to the end of the school year, all of these suppositions are being made. So I think again, the finesse will come later, but we have to go easy on each other, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. What I think is maybe challenging for me to think about is that I know some districts of where I have friends teaching. Their district has basically said similar to what Matt's situation is. It's like don't teach anything new, don't do anything new. I think that's really challenging because at least from my students, a lot of them have been like, let's learn something. I like to learn. let's do it, you know. And so my thought is like, where do you toe the line? You want to go easy on students and families and teachers in this type of crisis situation, of course, right? You want to be understanding of everybody's situation, but then you also want to make sure that kids are still sort of moving forward with learning the best that you can. I think that a lot of policymakers are struggling with that too. At the state level here in Pennsylvania, um, the governor and superintendents of schools have to make those decisions, and I can't imagine how difficult that is. Some are talking. There's chatter and writing about how you remain equitable in relationship to the Individuals Disabilities and Education Act, right? There's been talk about how you remain equitable in providing students laptops. There's been talk about how you remain equitable in providing internet service to students, or do you just scrap it all and drop off packets on everybody's door every other morning? I don't know, but I think that those are some of the decisions that I think are having to be made right now by teachers, by school administrators, and um, I think that's really tough. From a macro level, I'm just curious from you all about maybe some of the decisions that your schools had to go through and kind of what those processes look like for you guys. Julie, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I think about, going back to when we first learned there was going to be a school closure. Actually, in our building, one of our colleagues was wearing an Apple Watch, and his wife, who had been listening to, said, "Your school's closed." And that's how we found out about it. So that was kind of crazy. And we had exactly
No
about
joke.
25 minutes. Um, we were in the middle of, project work. It's messy upstairs, and we shut everything down. We gather the kids together, and in that moment, how do we, where there's no school tomorrow. And we had 20 minutes, it's 20 to 3, So I remember consciously thinking, I don't want them to be scared. Nothing like this has ever happened. There's this deadly disease lurking around, which they had known about. But really making sure we were projecting that calm, cool, collected, that was important to us. And then immediately, that next day, we started to think about, now what? And you're exactly right. I think the very first thought that many of us had was, what about access? It's easy to picture, very able students being able to navigate anything, and they're so resilient, and they can, right? But many of us teach a wide variety of students with many different needs and abilities, and access became a real issue. So immediately, I think schools were scrambling for, how do we reach everybody? How do we communicate with teachers, parents, students? Um, you know, we didn't even have time to really pack. We did send everybody home. We are one-on-one Chromebook, so that helped. Trying to, we shoved every single thing we could think of in that book bag and sent them home. So that was our experience. Um,
I
then
will
we
say we had a little bit of foresight, at least to um, like a couple days beforehand. Like we're paying attention to the news, and we see how things are going down, like across the country and other states and stuff like that. And Julie and I were both like, well, we got to teach the kids how to use Zoom before something ends up does happening here. So like, let's just do it for fun, like as like like the kids didn't know why we were actually doing it, other than that, hey, let's just do a little practice, kind of thing. So I think that was one. We kind of had already set them up to play with this platform, and then two, when we got that word and we had those 30 minutes, one of the first things we did was ask every kid, do you have a computer at home? Do you need to take a Chromebook home? And we made sure that they left with the technology that they needed before they left school.
Yeah, it's been challenging for sure, and there's been a sentiment. A couple of people have said, like, we got to extend grace to people during this situation, right? Because we're all sort of trying to figure it out as we go. So take my district for example. They sort of made an announcement: all Chromebooks will be picked up on this day. That day came. People picked up Chromebooks. They needed more. All right, we'll make one more day. They came the next day, they need another day. And we've had like 10 days, but they started off with just one. So that's a change we've had to make in order to be equitable for people. And that's okay. Like nobody should be pointing at fingers at the administrators or whatever. Oh, you didn't know. No, they're trying to figure out as they go. And another example is like I was speaking to a Spanish speaking family today for like 45 minutes trying to teach them how to log into Schoology. Is that my job? I'm not really a translator. I could direct them to someone else, but I just sort of did it, right? And figured it out. And then I contacted the director afterwards and we made a plan moving forward. But that's sort of what we're doing in this time. We're sort of just trying to figure it out. And some of that is going to look a little messy, and that's sort of okay, as long as we're moving forward, trying to figure things out, and learning from the things we have done that have been good or maybe not so good. But I think it's helpful to not be pointing the finger within a community, pointing the finger and looking at all the mistakes during a crisis, but more coming along and trying to help and assist and encourage and support, because people are going through tough times emotionally and mentally and physically, and we need to get through this together.
Yeah, I have been working for the last year for a local community-based organization that focuses on education here in Philly, and they put out a request on Tuesday, I guess yesterday of this week, asking if any of us would volunteer to come to their location and pick up essentially like a bag full of a laptop and some other stuff so they could support the families that are all affiliated with the organization. So a bunch of us instructors with the organization are slated to go in time chunks on Friday to pick up the laptop bag and some other materials and then go. They're giving like little direction booklets to us to go. We're supposed to get like 3 of them each, and we're going to go drop them off at like 3 different houses all around the city. And it's been really amazing to watch this CBO kind of mobilize to support the families that are under its wing. And I've seen a lot of that just recently, of nonprofits trying to mobilize to support students and families around equity and access, which I think it's just becoming increasingly at the fore of people's minds. You know, if there weren't questions about educational equity before this, there have to be now. And that's one of the biggest, I think, revelations that I have um, started to make over, especially over the last 2 weeks, as I talk to more and more teachers. Some teachers whose schools just are not going to be back in session for the foreseeable future, face-to-face session, that is. Some families that I've talked to who are like, we need food. Like, how do we get access to food? School was, they were giving the kids breakfast and lunch, and now families are in charge of those meals. Like, what's going on there? And all of those questions about equity, I think, are directly tied to how we have handled education as a country and as a state and municipalities in the past. And I think that those questions are coming right to the top right now. And I think it requires us to reflect and say, what are we really doing here? How are we handling this? When we're not in crisis, how are we handling this? Because some of those things we're either taking advantage of or we're not paying attention to. So yeah, that's one of the things that I've sort of been, revealed to me through this. And I'm sure you guys have had some revelations. What about you, Janine?
Yeah,
What's
I
been sort of
completely agree with you about the that widening gap in equity. You just worry about those families, those students. You know, right now, probably for some of them, I'm sure that it's the least of their worries is to get online and go to school, sort of thing. They're figuring out like where's the next meal coming from. So yeah, this has definitely brought that issue to the forefront. I completely agree with that. But this other revelations, though, I think here we're also presented with an opportunity, right? Like they removed the state testing. We don't have to take the PSSAs this year or the Keystones. We don't have to meet the 180-day requirement. So there's things that normally get in the way of a teacher, and maybe wanting to really meet the needs of students or wanting to really make things different or interesting. And I think here we also have an opportunity to do school a little differently. Like we can actually rethink or reimagine education here. And
What? Did you just drop the name of our podcast in the middle of the podcast?
did
What?
you catch that? I hope that teachers take a breath, take a moment to say, like, what can we really do with this as we move forward here? That's the other revelation, is that they're so resilient. Like
Hmm.
our students have, in the 3 weeks that we've transitioned here to online learning, the presentations that they've put together, the way that they've worked collaboratively, and like they're recording their own sessions and then turning things in as assignments. Like it's just amazing. I feel like the world is going to be okay. Like when I see them doing that kind of stuff. And that they've just rolled with the punches. They picked up right where we left off, and they're kind of leading us. I mean, they're going. We're doing it. So that's been cool.
Julie, what's been revelatory for you?
Well, like everyone, I've been amazed, as Janine has said, about the resilience of our students. It has been amazing. When presented with this new reality, they just went with it. I have had some pretty great conversations with teachers about what's essential. What are the non-negotiables from here to the end of the year, if need be? If this is our new reality, if we're going to expect students not to just maintain their skills, but also to advance them, if looking forward here, I guess I've come really to two schools of thought on this, two avenues of thought anyway. How can I reclaim some of what they've lost? I think there's some real mourning for some of those programmatic things that we had all been looking for, field work and dances and large gatherings, all that stuff, even field day, all those things that springtime in schools, all kids look forward to those sorts of things, especially since we teach 8th graders. So what's been lost, and how can I and my colleagues help reclaim some of that for them, so that not all is lost and all is different? So that'd be the second avenue of thought I'm really looking for, is how do we reinvent to make this into something new that is of value to them?
I love that line of thinking, because I think that's something we're all sort of grappling with right now. Is schools such an institution in many countries, um, and I mean that in a way that is, it has a deep rooted history to it. Many people have had school experiences. Most people have had school experiences, and here we are talking about totally disrupting those past experiences. And it I think it raises lots of really important questions, not the least of which is like, what about prom, man? What the heck? you know Matt,
Exactly.
what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about technology, right? Because that's sort of my job within the district, and it's just really interesting because technology has become a lot easier to use, right? It's become more accessible, it's become cheaper. Take the Chromebook, for example. But then I'm finding a lot of the decision makers, right, don't have that technology background. They don't have that thinking about technology. And I think a lot of districts, including mine, are underfunded when it comes to technology leaders, right? Like, who is leading this technology integration plan? And, what's their experience with technology? And how is this plan going to impact not just this year, like get us through, but what's this going to set us up for next year or the year after? Like, who makes those decisions and what's their thought process, with that? And again, I'm not pointing fingers. Like, everyone doesn't have to be an expert in that and be thinking about those things. But I think this is a big shift, right? Like no matter what the shift is going to be, this is definitely a moment in history that's pushing things forward at a fast pace. And what's going to happen, come September, or come 3 years from now, and that's a really good question to ponder. And I think that's going to, determine the direction the school makes, and the progress and the equity and the access and engagement of these tools with students. Because it's not just, as we all know, it's not just about like using a Chromebook or having a good learning management system or like this fancy new toy, but like how's that interacting with the student in a powerful way that engages them and produces like really good learning. So yeah, those are just some things I've been thinking about, and I can't get the picture that you said, Mike, earlier about turning a fire hose into a garden hose, and I just really love that. Yeah,
It
yeah. I
really,
mean,
it really is. That's where we're at with technology right now. It's like it's cool that we give your third grader an iPad, but at the end of the day, I think that even the iPad loses its luster um, after some time that kids spend with it. And I hope Apple doesn't like sue us after listening to this podcast. So we're getting near the end of the episode. Want to just talk about some things about what you all see as being next for schools here in this bizarro land experience that we're having. Um, one of the things I see is happening next is we probably won't have school for the end of the school year, and that's going to be super strange. I was just having a meeting with their entire senior class on Tuesday, and they were like, "So we can do the learning. We're going to be fine. We'll learn things. What's happening with graduation?" And I'm like, silence. I just don't even know what to tell them. And so to Julie's point earlier, it's like how are we bringing in the community and the traditions and the things that make school super special for students? Um, how are we re-examining what that's like? We canceled the country canceled March Madness. What's that like for a college athlete? And if you're canceling March Madness, you're certainly canceling, let's say, a senior year, half of your senior year lacrosse season or soccer season. And what's that like for a student? And how do we regain some of those things? So I think that schools are going to have to start to grapple with some of those questions pretty soon, and because they're going to have some answers, and they're um, going to have to talk to a bunch of senior families about what graduation is going to look like, and that's going to not be, you know, a terribly happy conversation for many of them.
But I have no doubt that they will come up with some really creative way to embrace it, make it a celebration, and bring the community together. I'm just amazed by how well people have been just figuring things out and finding a way to really make it work. I mean, it won't be the same. No, it'll be different, but I think that together we'll be able to figure it out and make it special.
Well, I think most of our conversation has had to do with access and equity. And I think right now um, we have that good faith measure, at least in Pennsylvania here. But I think more immediately will be asked of schools to ensure that all are participating in this new environment. Um, and to Matt's point, I think right now teachers are inundated. I don't know about you all, but in my my email is it's 1,000 emails a day pitching some new flashy online work. And actually, I appreciate like the education community has really come together. There's so many innovative products out there that really can help support us. I'm really cautious of adopting any of those wholesale. Um, a pile of worksheets in my classroom is no way to do school. And that same purpose of a worksheet and just kind of drill and kill, that's the last thing that I want to do in this new environment. So we're going to have to invent and I think immediately for me, my task will be to find like-minded people out there who've managed to do this well. If we're coming from a project-based approach, for example, which I hope to, what does that look like online? I've got some ideas, but it's going to take a minute, right? As we've said, to create this new space for the students and for us too. So yeah, those are some of the things I think are next.
Yeah, I was thinking as you're saying that, what our evolving relationship between school and parents is going to be like. I think it's really important that
Yeah.
a lot of what happens behind school doors parents don't see. And so I think that that relationship needs to become a little bit tighter, and will necessitate uh, additional communication. But then parents are also going to have to work to shift their expectations around around communication too. So teachers can get into the routine of communicating with parents, but that also might mean that parents need to get into the routine of um, expecting reasonable amount of communication from their teachers, which I think is a really tricky balance. Um, Matt, what do you think's on the horizon here?
Who knows? I definitely don't. Um, but I know that we have to be patient. Patient with ourselves, patient moving forward. Um, and we can't just get through this, right? I was talking with the other tech coach in our district today, and we were like, this has been 4 weeks, and it feels like a blur. And although it's a crisis and those sorts of things, life still can't be like that. Like, we can't be working 16-hour days to try to figure out all of these, hundreds of issues, right? We still have to be patient with ourselves, with the community, be supportive, and also have to have a long-term approach. Like, yes, we have to get through today. It's a crisis, but what does this mean for tomorrow? What does this mean for a month from now? Where's the leadership leading? It's not almost what shouldn't we not do, but what are we to do? What should we put our energy at? Because we can't just be going around putting out thousands of fires. It's not effective, and it's not healthy, and it's not a good approach in the midst of a crisis. Because we're not crisis workers. But yeah, those are just some thoughts, and I'm always sort of self-focused in my thinking about technology and what this is going to do, moving forward, and how's it going to grow things. I'm maybe not as positive as Janine, but I think that this is going to propel things in a good way.
There's just so many things that I think we briefly touched on that we could talk for hours about. Testing and what that means for college admissions, what like regular school day time even means. Like what happens if we were to just drop a siesta in the middle of the day where kids can have lunch and take a nap and like have some homework time and like whatever, and don't have them be in school during that time. I think of like, what are we gaining by removing the commute to and from school, both for teachers and for students? What are we gaining when a student can just say, I got to take a break for a little bit because I need to just go outside and run around and like dig a hole or find an earthworm or put, a rock on top of another rock for 20 minutes and come back in and learn again? I know these are probably things that like homeschool parents are like, we've been saying this for, in 75 years, but it, I'm not a homeschool result of a homeschool family, and I have never homeschooled a young person before, so I don't know any of those things. But I think they're important questions that schools in general are going to have to kind of grapple with.
No, I think there's a lot to figure out as we go forward. I just think remembering that we don't have to figure it all out today, um,
Yeah.
one day at a time. Um, just really thankful that we have the team that I have around me to help navigate some of these things. Um, I know that, the last thing we want to do at the end of a full teaching day is to have yet another meeting, but that is how we end our days right now, with, full on meetings every day, because this is hard to figure out. So I think we'll just continue to navigate. We will find a way to make sure it's equitable and that kids have access. We will thoughtfully create and design learning experiences for kids in this new environment. It'll happen.
So we're all right. We're winding down to the end of our first episode. I want to just plug our next episode. We're gonna move on to episode 2, which is all about distance learning. We hope that you will come back, listen again. Distance learning should be a good topic. I'm sure Matt, our tech guy, has lots of things to say about distance learning and what that means, and both from a technological standpoint as well as from psychological and environmental standpoint. And I'm sure we'll talk lots about equity and access. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Catch us on episode 2 on Rethinking EDU.